Okay, I'll believe this when I see it. Okay, so can you hear me out there in the real world? Well, quiet there. I guess there's sound going out. All right. So, as I said, this is no big deal, just casually getting set up and having a conversation with people who want to follow along. So, let me ask you guys first, what do you want to talk about? So I've got options here. I just put out this video about mosaicism and chimeras and all that stuff. We could talk about that. I could just sit here and answer whatever random questions you have. Um, the last creationist nonsense I dealt with was that goofy survey. Okay, we got a question. Thoughts on the China cure for type 2 diabetes, and if the data trials are being shared with the science community. I know next to nothing about that. Haven't heard a word about it. So maybe they're being shared with the broader science community. They're not sharing them with me. Yes, nice to see you too. This uncomfortable feeling I often get in class where I say, okay, ask me questions. Let's talk about the topic of the day. And I know that usually what will happen is total silence. It's really easy to stun students that way. Especially when my first question is one I can't answer. Oh, it's okay. So yeah, the thumbnail reminds me of an excellent book. It's titled "The Human Faces of God." What Scripture reveals when it gets God wrong, and why inerrancy tries to hide it. Oh, what a long title, and now how weird of it. Yeah, I am so out of the religion game. I just have no interest in what's going on. There are people better equipped to talk about this stuff than me. So yeah, I'm at that stage where yeah, I've been wrestling with this and dealing with this creationism and theism and all this stuff for 40 or 50 years. And I feel like, why are people still arguing about this? Yeah, I see creation myths is there. Oh, yours is genetic. Your problem is a genetic entropy. Oh, yeah, how long has that been floating around? I don't know about under that name, but we've been getting that concept thrown at us, since, oh, the 1980s, 1990s. Creationists complaining that everything is running downhill and genetics can't cope with it, and we're all gonna face the end times, and none of it makes any sense because we seem to be doing just fine, and most species are doing just fine except for the ones we're poisoning and killing and destroying their habitat. So yeah, I I just find it all kind of obnoxious and silly. Let me see. Let me get these comments up a little more easily to be seen for me. Oh yeah, the Ten Commandments in Louisiana. Oh man. Uh and Creationist asks another good question. Here's one for you. You've been doing so well. What's your absolutely favorite bad argument? Oh, do I have a favorite? I mean, the thing is, there's been a whole bunch of arguments that seem to have expired finally, and I'll mention one. I wouldn't call it a favorite, but it's one that's pretty easy to deal with, um, and that is the leap second argument. Has anybody heard that one? Oh, that they have to add a leap second every once in a while. So they extrapolate from that and say if we've been adding seconds and we go back in time, then there that tells us when the date of creation was. You just have to add up the leap seconds. Yeah, uh, it's utter foolishness because no, that's not how leap seconds work. It's because there's a mismatch between the definition of how long a second is and what a second actually is. So you got to eventually try and catch up with you got to just catch up with the errors that you've been accumulating for a long time. So that's a really silly argument that I used to get all the time back in the 1990s and 2000s. And uh, once you explain what's going on, it's so stupid that even creationists can get it and give up on it. Yeah, it's all creationists don't understand anything. Yeah, creationists, you went through that survey that oh man, that was those the only purpose of that survey was that it reveals all the misconceptions that creationists have, and they're full of them. Why did you lose weight? That's a strange question. You're asking me why I because I ate less. Does that kind of help? Let's see. Let's get a more serious question here. Oh, global overheating. Oh man. Yeah, I'm fortunate because I live in one of the parts of the country that is not experiencing this kind of problem. So it's actually kind of pleasant here. Oh, I am not using StreamYard. I initially set this up. I was just using OBS and going directly, and that did not work. There were all kinds of streaming errors, and I have no idea what was going with that. So then I fell back in my usual familiar, uh, good old, you know, uh, Zoom. I'm just using Zoom here, which has its drawbacks, but okay. It's kind of overkill if you're just doing a simple face-to-face like this kind of thing. Uh, let's see. Did you hear about the Oort cloud object they say has sugars? That's not a surprise. That yeah, sugars are no big deal. Just get a carbon chain, add a hydroxyl group, you got a sugar. So yeah, that one does not surprise me at all. That there are sugars floating around. You know, it's chemistry. This has always been my argument for the abiogenesis critics out there is that life is just chemistry. So what are you talking to me about? We don't need anything other than chemistry. Just simple polymer chemistry gets you started, and then we build on that. Okay. Uh, okay, again, another question, another comment from Dan. I have a different interpretation of that quiz. Dembski knows he's lying and straw manning all of that stuff. He's just a dishonest hack. You know what? I can sort of see that, but I've always figured that Dembski was at least a little bit intelligent. And even if you're just being a dishonest hack and making up stuff and throwing that out there, you could do that competently, right? I mean, you suggested a whole bunch of things as you were going through that 40 question survey where you would have done it completely differently and would have done a better job. And that's where I disagree. I don't think they're lying. I think they're actually just that stupid. That's all there is to it. And so that's why he was babbling away with all those really bad questions. Okay, back to the Oort object. Yeah, that I mean, there's all kinds of there's alcohols and aldehydes all over the place out there in space, very diffuse and spread out. Uh, but if you're thinking, could this be a could this be a contributor to the origin of life on Earth? Yeah, maybe, but the problem is that it is so diffuse that even if we were passing through a cloud of sugars, it would be so spread out and so diffuse that the contribution to the ocean would be trivial. It just wouldn't make as much of a difference. Um, yeah, so I've heard those arguments lots of times that that it's stuff falling from space that started life, and it seems much more reasonable to me that the current ideas are all about things like white smokers and things going on at the deep sea rifts and so forth. Those make more sense to me because those are processes that generate adequate concentrations of the materials so that, you know, because I think that's an important first step. You got to get enough concentration, enough density of these various compounds that you can get interactions going and interactions that lead to, proto-life. And we just don't have that in outer space. Yeah, creationists. The competence thing is what bugs me about that survey. Is it was really stupid. That somebody should have stopped for a moment. And when I'm arguing with creationists, I try really hard to put myself in their mindset and try to see what point they're making. And you know, I don't generally just assume, oh, you're just an idiot who's babbling. That's not the way I'm thinking at all. Although eventually I may end up thinking that way after talking to them for a while. But yeah. Oh, and okay. Science question for deep sea events. Serious question. Replication first or metabolism first? Well, I think metabolism first, just to get the distribution of monomers and polymers built up to a sufficient density. But that's not living. I kind of feel like there has to be some parallel formation of information and as they're carrying out metabolism. So I think it's kind of unfair to set them as two hypotheses apart from one another. I bet you the answer is going to be we got to fuse those together, and that's where the answer will lie. Uh, but if you're asking me, what about the chemistry? I think definitely metabolism first, and then there has to be a step that comes along to add information to have that continuity of information. I know that there are some models where you could imagine that early proto-life, you can make vesicles and you could just pack things into there and try to get just by chance, get the proper balance of the precursors that you need to get metabolism going. Yeah, maybe that may have been a start, but I hate to use this phrase. I kind of imagine it had to be something to get a primordial soup going at first. So we had to get some chemistry first, but that once we want to start getting replication and life going, there's got to be something more. Yeah. So I don't have, I am not going to succumb to your black and white thinking where it's one or the other. That's my definitive answer. It's got to be something blending the two. Yeah, let's see. Smith and Morowitz take a metabolism first view. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah, acetate redox cycles or ribosomes first to make it more specific. Okay, that's more specific. Yeah, acetate redox cycles first. Yeah, you got to have something that's generating energetic compounds that you can use to do things like build up ribosomes. Those of us intimidated by chemistry, do you have advice for getting started? And do you like Khan Academy? Um, ooh, getting started. Where do you get started? I mean, go take a biochemistry class, right? That's where you get started. Take a general chemistry class. Uh, Khan Academy, it's a useful tool. Do people actually sit down and use that as a way to learn a field? I mean, I've looked over it, and I have actually stolen some Khan Academy materials to supplement lectures, uh, but I wouldn't know how to use it. Starting from scratch, how would I use this to get me up to speed on basic chemistry and biochemistry? That stuff is this is why professors matter, is we can help you figure it out as you go along. We can answer your questions and lead you through the material and hopefully get something, get you started so that then you can take over and start getting into the sources. Um, yeah, so that's kind of an awkward thing about Khan Academy. It's a bunch of useful information and I think it's well presented, but I don't know where it fits into the ecosystem of learning. That it's it doesn't do the job I want for my students. But other faculty, I'm sure, find it a really useful supplement, useful way to get the material going. Oh, let's see. Oh, things are piling up here. All you people, I expected like 2 people to show up or something. Let's see. Um, Talking science. How do you define science? Is it a body of knowledge? No, it's not a body of knowledge or a method. Yeah, it's a method. Is science used just to sound sexy in some fields like computer science? The way I use it is, pragmatically, when we're teaching science, I think the laboratory experience is essential. Or if you're in a different field, if you're into ecology or something, observational, going out and doing observations, doing data collection, that you need to have that raw material to carry out the inductive process of science thinking. And so, yeah, it's going back to what we were talking about earlier, the Khan Academy and textbooks and all that stuff. that's not science either. That's information to get you started at a point sufficiently far along that you're not just repeating things that people did 300 years ago. Um, so yeah, do we need a replacement phrase for primordial soup? Yeah, um, it's kind of a catchy phrase, but I know one creationist who thinks we should be talking about primordial peanut butter. Oh, that's a blast from the past. The creationist who went out and said evolution couldn't happen because he opened jars of peanut butter and didn't find mice crawling out of them. Yeah, it was. They're always such stupid ideas. I relearned calculus that way. Oh, you from Khan Academy or from just okay? Yeah, but I think maybe the operational word is there is relearned. Please explain organic chemistry. What's with the hexagons? Oh, how to explain that? Well, that's uh, when you're doing organic chemistry, you're working with carbon bonds, and when you get a bunch of carbons, they kind of naturally, spontaneously form into, um, you know, if you've got alternating double bonds, you get a nice flat hexagon. You get something like benzene. So it's just what they spontaneously fall into all the time. But of course, then you get things like chair formation, and yeah, it's a whole big deal. Okay, Philip Ball's designing for the molecular world. Yeah, that's a good starting place. Uh, Apparently, peanut butter can become diamonds given sufficient pressure and heat, but not very good ones, though. Of course, not very good ones, because that's starting with very impure material. You've got all kinds of interesting contaminants in there, so of course you're going to get ugly brown diamonds out of it. Yes. Do you think we will find unequivocal evidence for life on exoplanets in our lifetime? Oh, oh, what an interesting question. Yeah, yeah, maybe. I think it's possible. So there was a report not long ago about what did they find? They found a bunch of reaction products on some exoplanet that on Earth at least are produced by organic reactions. And there was a suggestion that, yeah, maybe that's evidence for life. You use the word unequivocal, though, and maybe that's a tougher one to meet. I remember the old experiment where they sent a probe to Mars, and they had their life detector where they scooped up some of the Martian soil and they added water, and they expected, this is, if we get a reaction and it produces gases, then that's evidence for life. And no, it wasn't, because it didn't behave like the metabolic kinetics that we get with life. It spewed out some gases for a little while because there was a chemical reaction going on, and then it just flatlined. So that's an example of, hey, we thought we were going to find unequivocal evidence. People were very excited about it first, but then an alternative explanation came along, and uh, yeah, life on Mars, Enceladus, Titan, clouds of Venus, etc. Yeah, those are places where we could conceivably send a probe and find out what's actually there and maybe get evidence of life. The only one of the on that category where I think it's at all possible. I think Mars is long dead. I bet you will find evidence of primordial life, but nothing nothing now. Venus definitely dead. It's cooked and it's acidic and it's just a hellhole. But some of those ice-covered moons, they've got deep underwater volcanic activity, and it's generated by the tidal forces from the planet they're orbiting. So there's a source of energy, there's water, there's other compounds, nitrogenous compounds, carbon. Maybe. I don't know how we're going to get there. We're going to have to drill a very deep hole through the ice on Titan or something to try and find something. Yeah, the peanut butter thing is not a real argument. That was ludicrous. And we knew at the instant that guy came out with his video. Okay, primordial. Why are you hung up on the word primordial? Primordial, I think, is part of the problem. We got to get rid of that, as well as soup and jelly. Rennet is a complex enzyme, so no, that wouldn't count. You can't have a primordial rennet. As a con is great for getting a math heads up prior to entering college. Oh, that's important, actually. If that's how people are using it, I'm pleased. This has always been our big problem with incoming students, is the high schools aren't teaching math adequately. And I mean basic stuff, like just simple algebra. You cannot do general chemistry without knowing simple algebra and being able to do the simple calculations there. So yeah, the more of that students get, it's one of the things I emphasize to my kids, even if they weren't going into the sciences, is when they were in high school, take the math. Uh, Ideally, you will take math up through calculus. I mean, I know I did back in high school. When I was in high school, there was the college-bound track, and that was where you took all the sciences and you took the chemistry and you took calculus ultimately, and that was kind of the prerequisite for getting into college, and it really helped. I mean, I sailed through my first years of college because I came in equipped with all the math, and that's what we need more of. Is there intelligent life on Earth? Not if it involves Republicans. Maybe chlorophyll? Yeah, chlorophyll could spontaneously form, actually. Um, okay, Nislig. One point Smith and Morowitz make is that life is anchored to the planetary redox equilibrium. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I mean, all the metabolism first arguments are relying on that fundamental aspect of basic chemistry, the redox reaction where you're passing electrons from one molecule to another. And I gotta agree with that guy. Yeah, you gotta. Yeah, and a disequilibrium is essential as well. So the whole idea that um, life could arise in space, I think, is unlikely. Okay, have you seen Dr. Becky's YouTube channel, Astrophysicist Dr. Becky Smedhurst? Oh, I have seen a couple of those videos. I thought they were good, uh, but biologist, you know, I appreciate some physics. I appreciate some fundamental chemistry, but for long-term interest, I got to get biology in there. So I appreciate what she's doing. I like her work. Just haven't been a fervent follower of that. Well, hello, Hive Psi. Do we have spiders? We do have spiders all over the house right now. I have recently started raising Latrodectus because I'm been getting desperate. My original plan was that I would raise these common spiders around here. And what I would do is do a collections and tallying up species in the summer, and then set them up in colonies in the lab. And then we could do cool experiments with spiders all through the long winter months. Because if you don't know, I'm in Minnesota, and winters here are savage and fierce. And no, there's no spiders out running around in January. So the idea was I'd get them going in the lab. And then I was very disappointed to discover that all of the species I worked with, they would stop laying eggs when winter came. I've got them in constant temperature, constant humidity, constant light levels. Um, and they breed great in the summer, and then in the fall, boom, they're done. They just stop. And this is the case even if I've got young spiders that I've raised. So it's not like they're exhausted and too old to do things. They just stop. And I don't know what's going on there. They got to have some kind of interesting seasonal rhythm going. I know from other papers that they don't have great circadian rhythms. They're really bad for circadian rhythms. But they must have some cues that they're following. And so I'm planning an experiment this fall. We are going to try and see if we can vernalize spiders. So yeah, they're going to go through the summer months, and then I'm going to actually put a bunch of spiders in a refrigerator. Not too cold, but just cool enough to stop them. These spiders can survive down to 0 degrees centigrade. So yeah, just putting them in a refrigerator is going to be fine. And I'll see if I can reset their seasonal clock. Okay, cat. Yes, there's a cat causing trouble right now. Oh, great. She just knocked a book off the shelf. That's what cats do, right? So anyway, yeah, so I'm going to try vernalizing them. I have some other experiments in mind for the winter months. I'm going to be setting up some thermometers at different depths and record how temperature changes beneath the snowpack and things like that. So we'll play with that. But also I've been thinking, oh, there was a jumping spider right there. Oh yeah, that Salticus scenicus just ran by. Yeah, we keep spiders. They're running all over the house, and we don't mind. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to try Latrodectus to see if maybe it's a little bit better about, because they're from a more warm climate. So maybe they don't have the adaptations to notice that it's winter and you can't lay eggs in the winter. The Latrodectus I've got are from Florida, and we all know that people in Florida are idiots, right? So we'll see. Anyway, that's another project going on. So yes, I've got some black widows right over here, and I've got a tarantula I brought home because I'm going to show it to my granddaughter in Madison tomorrow. Well, she has been sending me pictures she draws of spiders, and she was really impressed with some photos I posted of the tarantula, because that's big and it's got huge jaws and things like that. So we'll see. So of course we got spiders around here. Let's see. I'm falling behind. Well, I gotta go all the way back up to here. Let's see. Could life have started on Mars and been transferred to Earth by asteroid impacts? Oh, that's a far-fetched hypothesis. You're assuming that conditions on on Earth were not adequate to get life started, but they were on Mars, that's it's a possibility. I don't think it's very likely. I we got to recognize that the Earth is a really good place for living things. And well, we got to quit screwing it up for one. But yeah, the origins of life almost certainly were terrestrial or marine. Same thing. That that's where everything got started. Let's see. Somehow we're talking about intelligence. Apparently, elephants have individual names amongst themselves and their own language. That doesn't surprise me either. Yeah. Of course, humans have such a complex definition of what language means that I don't know if they'd have something like that. You know, we've got all this grammar and syntax, and I should talk to my daughter about this because she's the computational linguist, and she could probably tell me all kinds of things. But yeah, you know, our language is really weird and complicated and elaborate, and I would not be surprised if, like, elephants make a specific noise for a particular phenomenon. There's lots of animals that make specific noises that are associated with threats, for instance. You know, prairie dogs. If you've ever walked through a field of prairie dogs, they've got very specific sounds they make when you show up and if you get too close and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah. Let's see. Today I discovered that wasps hunt spiders. A wasp dropped a half-eaten spider near its nest in my Windows frame. Yes, that wasps are the enemy of spiders. Yeah, we've got them out here. And there are some of the wasps around here do hunt spiders and kill them. So it happens. Okay. I presume you're referring back to the seasonal rhythm stuff. They must have an internal clock. Yeah, because we know that there are internal clocks for circadian rhythms, and there are also ones that extend over a year, and so you can have seasonal rhythms. And I'm sure they've got something like that. But typically, when you look at rhythms in animals, they have a mechanism for resetting them. So circadian rhythms, for instance, reset upon exposure to sufficient light. So that was my idea with vernalization is we hit them with cold temperatures for a week or so. They get used to oh, it's really winter. And then you bring them out into the warmer temperatures and then maybe they'll think that, oh, it's time to get ready for spring. We're just trying to fool the spiders. We'll see if we can make that work. Let's see. Man, you guys have multiple conversations here going, and I'm getting lost. By the way, it also evolves that way. Is that there is zero thermodynamic difference between siblings, yet one has more ability to reproduce than another. You're just talking about basic selection. Okay. Oh, all kinds of interesting questions. Let's see. To get back to rhythms, could it be length of day? No, because we've got them in a standard light dark cycle. They're all locked up in an incubator, and I got lights that come on at specific times of day, and they're unchanging. So no, they're not getting that signal. Let's see. What do you think of the insect apocalypse? The insect apocalypse is real. I've seen it. I've been watching it for years. Not in a really quantitative sense, but you get the basic impression all over the place that when I first moved to Minnesota, which was about 2000, and we drove across the state to come to Morris, Minnesota. The truck I was driving, the front grill had like an inch thick layer of insects that we'd collected just by driving through them. And we saw literal clouds of them. And when I walked downtown in the evening, like to go to the movies or something, you could see them dancing around all the streetlights, just dense clouds of insects all over everything. And no, that's not the case anymore. Yeah, I was surprised the other day when I saw a truck that must have driven a good long distance that actually had a thin film of insects all over the grill. But that's about it. And when I go out at night and walk around, my wife and I sometimes go out on bat walks and things like that. We just don't see the huge numbers of insects we used to. So it's a worry, a long-term worry that, of course, also I'm in an agricultural area, which is really gross in their overuse of pesticides. So who knows? That could be a contributing factor. Maybe it's better where other people are. Okay. Ancient Hadean era on Earth was more hostile than on early Mars. You don't think Mars had an equivalent sort of phase? Oh, and ignore Paul Davies. Paul Davies is an obnoxious moron. I really can't stand his work. And it's not just that he makes apologies for religion. Have you read his theories about cancer? They are insultingly stupid. He argues that cancer is an atavism, where these are cells that are reverting back to the state they had in the ancient primordial oceans. There's that word primordial again. And that's absurd. That's just not the way evolution works. It's not the way molecular biology works. This is 19th century nonsense all dressed up. So, yeah. So, yeah, I do not like Paul Davies. Oh, what is the current view of the importance of epigenetics and evolution? You're asking me? Oh, I have biases there. I think epigenetics is crucial to evolution. At least for multicellular plants and animals, that kind of thing. That epigenetics, what that does is it adds a layer of control that increases the latitude over which an adaptive solution can be found. So, yeah, if nothing else, one simple way to think of it is if you've got an organism that can have a range of phenotypes in response to the environment, that means that the population can expand over a larger area, and the organisms that find themselves on the fringe of the range can then adapt to that and adapt epigenetically as well as genetically. And so you can get this necessary constant increase in diversity that way. It may also be a tool for speciation. That, if you've got a range of possibilities, it's speciation. One of the models for speciation is just simply geographic, and having epigenetic tools means you can drift off into broader ranges, and that has interesting consequences. And then, of course, that video I just put out, I make a big deal about epigenetics there. I've just been teaching about epigenetics for the past 3 or 4 months, so it's on my brain a lot that there's interesting phenomena going on there. But yeah, that the thing is, and I don't know if Creation Myths is still here. I was actually thinking of his video about the problem creationists have packed themselves into, because They insist that the entire genome has to be functional. But that makes no sense if you're thinking about things like epigenetics, because here we got all these things that are controlling the expression of the genes. And one of the control elements, many of the control elements, just literally shut down entire regions. And like I mentioned in that video, this is another phenomenon with aging, is you get increased methylation as you get older and older and older. It does that without dramatic genetic effects. We got some genetic effects. I just got to look in the camera and see my beard going white. And yeah, we get some effects, but we don't drop dead when we hit 40. Even though the epigenetics, the influence of those epigenetics are changing over time. So yeah. And I also talked about twins and demonstrating epigenetic drift. So yeah, we're just wobbling all over the place here. And again, this is one of the phenomena that's going on in cells, is that they have to be adapted to a wide range of conditions. And epigenetic factors are one of the ways cells do that. Okay, what else we got here? Oh, can we get you to put up a light trap before the summer's over? Would be interested to see what you might catch. Yes, that's another thing I've been contemplating doing. There's a woman named Jessica who runs a monthly bug club in Minneapolis, and I was just out there at the end of May, early June, and she had this all set up. It was spectacular, just hanging a sheet, and then she had some lights that she would shine on it, and she was doing demos where all the neighborhood kids would come by and see all the insects collecting on there. And I think that would be fun to do. So I'll probably do that this summer. I do have a bunch of I got some UV lights, some UV lamps, and I have the usual standard LEDs. And I think it would be pretty easy to set up and see what comes along. So yes, I will try that. I'll let you know. I'll make a video of it, all right? Give me something else to make videos about. Let's see. I was in my grandmother's backyard once just watching an orb weaver sitting at the center of its web, and I noticed a jumping spider crawling on the wall near it, and suddenly it pounced straight on to the orb weaver. Oh yeah. I have seen spiders hunting spiders. Pulsid spiders are notorious for that, for hunting things like the Theridaidae. Is you got pulsids all over the place. We got a lot of them down in our basement, and I figure they kind of keep the population of house spiders down a little bit. Yeah, and I've seen. So I've got a couple of observation sites around the house where I go out and regularly check on things. Like our compost bin is a miracle of creation, all kinds of things buzzing out of there, and the flies or the spiders are thriving in there on the flies that are also thriving. And there's kind of this slow competition and displacement of different spider species over time. So in previous years, I've mainly seen Steatota borealis out there, which is a big, heavy spider that's pretty good at hunting things and can jump on those other spiders pretty effectively. And there's been a shift where I'm starting to lose out on Steatota borealis, and we're acquiring all the things like Theridion and these other lighter, faster spiders out there. So that's another interesting thing to study, is ask, why is that happening? Because one of the questions in my head is, why do we have so much spider diversity? Why do we have so many different spiders living in my yard? Why can't just one spider rule over them all? And no, they can't, because they all got different strategies. Um, yeah, I used to hear crickets and frogs constantly at night. Now I hardly hear any. Same here. They're kind of dropping out. That's another concern. It doesn't help that when I find a cricket in my yard, I feed it to a spider. But yeah, we got to value different species. Oh, oh, I don't know. Do I want to? Do you want to stick with this darkness here? I can stick. Yeah, it's kind of ominous, but no. Let me bring up some light. Spooky bed hair. Yeah, that's me, all right. Oh, you hadn't heard about Paul Davies and cancer? Oh, I've got some blog posts about it. If you search for Paul Davies on Pharyngula, you will not find articles praising him. There's a lot of just tearing my hair out at how stupid this whole thing is. And he's got a colleague, and they occasionally send me papers. They're looking for my approval, and they're not getting it because the papers are just sinking deeper and deeper into the muck of all this atavism stuff. Let's see. My black hole spider is still alive. She's at least 3 years old. Oh, yeah. I have heard, and maybe HiveSci can tell me otherwise. I have heard that black widows don't live as long as the steatota and parasteatota. I mean, I've had parasteatota that I've kept in the lab for 4 years or so, and they're still healthy and producing eggs. But I heard a rumor that Latrodectus tends to die out after 2 years. So we'll see. Uh, I bet you get some nice beetles. Do we? Yes, we do. I've I've actually got a student who wanted to look into the diversity of different forms, not just spiders. And what she was doing was comparing some of these well-tended lawns, the horrible lawns that everyone wants to keep, that are full of Kentucky bluegrass that they mow regularly and stuff like that, with wilder areas in town. And so what would happen is she would put out traps and she would go collecting, and then she'd show up in my lab once a week with a pile of jars and bottles, and we'd dump them out and go through them and identify the species. And yeah, there were a lot of beetles, a lot of impressively ferocious looking beetles. But mainly what we saw is springtails. Springtails are everywhere. Yeah, this is where I learned to appreciate springtails, because they are the primary herbivores you find lurking, and detritivores that you find lurking in the grass. And people really ought to look more carefully at what's in their lawns, because there's all kinds of cool little insects and things crawling around down there. So yeah, it's just nothing but springtails we'd find even in these manicured lawns around here. You'd scoop up a bit and you'd find that most things were dead or absent, except the springtails. The springtails were crawling all over the place. Let's see. Jumpers are notorious for hunting recluse spiders. We don't have recluses here. I feel like I have moved into this hole for spiders where we don't have any of the exciting spiders. We do not have black widows. We do not have recluses. So, I mean, we got lots of Therideidae, but I it's okay. I've imported some black widows. Who knows? Maybe I'll just let them loose. No, I won't. I am not going to get the reputation as the old guy who infested all of western Minnesota with black widows. Although I don't know that they could survive well in our climate. Let's see. Oh, okay. Star Song, I don't know why, but I frequently find jumping spiders on me when I've been outside for a few minutes. Oh, good for you. You are lucky. That's a good sign. I have lots of spiders that come all over me too. Um, the best student for that, though, I had a student. We would go out into the field. We were doing this thing where every week we'd go out to a different park or region and just stroll around. And she was amazingly lucky because she was constantly walking into spider webs and getting big spiders all over her face. Yeah, it's a kind of business. You got to be tolerant of spiders to be an arachnologist. Fortunately, I was tolerant of spiders before that even. Uh, you can't farm spiders because they eat each other. That depends. There depends on the circumstances. There was that infamous water treatment plant near Baltimore where they found millions of spiders. They found these great big dense webs all over the place, and they were living in mutually cooperating little groups, and they were all doing fine together. Multiple species, and some species were all over the place. But that was unusual because that was a place with plenty of food. They did not have to worry about fighting over food because all these bugs were rising up off the sewage as it was being treated. They'd end up on these great billowing sheets of silk that were all over the place. And for some reason, the people who worked there complained. They wanted them removed. I don't get that. Let's see. Drifting towards monoculture. Was that referring to lawns? Yeah. I kind of have learned to hate lawns over the last few years. Just they're so boring and they're everyone's taking over. There's a great YouTube channel that I don't know if you've heard of it, but crime pays, but botany doesn't. This guy is so much fun to listen to. He's just this profane botanist who wanders around. Right now, he's down in Mexico and he was in Texas. And he just wanders around. He's getting all excited about every little species of plant he sees out there. I don't know plants much at all, but I really appreciate his knowledge. And yeah, he clearly hates lawns, like all right-thinking people do. Uh, we tried here to we tried to cultivate a very weedy lawn, and it is pretty weedy. Uh, and we tried to let it go as long as we could, but this city came down on us. They said we had to go mow it, or they'd hire somebody to mow it for us. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, what are you doing, Extant Frodo 2? Doug Axe, Behe, David Berlinski, William Lane, Craig, Dembski, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, you've got arguments to counter all of them. Yeah, I think I do too. Of course, the catch is, are you good at delivering those arguments? Because that's kind of my problem is I am not a professional debater. I I'm not even a good theatrical sort of person. So yeah, I can read their stuff and I can sit there and think, oh, this is absolutely insane. How can you possibly believe this? And I can formulate lots of arguments, but doing it to their face, no, that's tough, much tougher. I much prefer talking to people who want to think and are receptive to listening and good stuff like that. Let's see. Fun story. When I was in the smoking area and saw a jumping spider crawling into my bag, someone nearby heard me say, "Hey, no hitchhikers, the spider." Then I emptied my bag to get the spider out. Why? You could have taken it home. Yeah, I do that all the time. Yeah, even when I fly, they do not inspect your bag for spiders. So I've got a little collection of vials I always bring with me wherever I go, and I'll catch spiders and tuck them into my bag. And they're small, so if somebody, TSA is being anal retentive and they start going through the bag and they find these vials, as far as they're concerned, they're empty. Or if they see the spider, they do not want to open it. So arachnophobia sometimes plays out well. Let's see. I am doing landrace. What is landrace? Oh, oh yeah, okay. The cult Lino says I have an aunt who's a geologist and she gets excited at random rocks or formations. Oh man, yeah. When I lived in Oregon and also when I lived in Utah, those places were so great to go out hiking with a geologist because there were so many wild things to see there. And also, I had a friend, a deceased friend, unfortunately, who was a phenomenal naturalist. And he knew all the plants, he knew everything in the forest. So you wanted to go for a walk with him in the forest. So that was always nice. Uh, I'm a boring person to go on a walk with because all I'll be able to talk to you about is spiders. I know the spiders really well, but anything else, oh, that's a beetle. I recognize that. But spiders, I get excited about spider diversity, and so that's all you see. And a lot of the spiders I really get into are in old falling down rat infested buildings, so not so romantic and dramatic. Oh yeah, pill containers. I The thing is, when I started working on spiders, I got serious about it. And first thing I did was I wrote to American Plastic Company and ordered hundreds of these vials that are about so big, and all the sponge things to close them off. Because I was familiar with those from working with Drosophila. So uh, I have drawers full of these perfect vials for catching spiders. Let's see. You mix a bunch of varieties of a crop together and select what does best rather than using seeds from the store. Uh-huh. Yeah, the one restriction, the one restraint we have is we're kind of letting things grow wild in the lawn. So we got a lot of broadleaf stuff. We've got a lot of variety of things. Uh, but my wife in particular is very concerned that we should get native plants, not all these invasive species. So that's her criterion. It's got to be a native species, and also it's got to be attractive to insects, so flowering plants in particular. So she's been cultivating all these interesting local native plants, and we're trying to get them started here. Uh, when last year we made a little trip up north to the Crookston area just to go scouting out there. And she was having a ball. We brought a shovel with us, and I would have to stand guard and watch because she'd go out there and she would steal some of the plants from the wild areas, not going into people's yards, but getting all excited about exotic plant. Well, not exotic because they're native, but getting excited about plants that she could find. And then we'd bring them back and plant them and hope that they survived. Oh yeah, the Joro spiders. Ah, they're so pretty though. Again, we're in a hole because we don't have them here. But I wouldn't mind if they migrated up here. I think in that whole invasive versus native thing, nobody should be afraid of Joro spiders except the spiders that they're going to displace. So, yeah. A question for spiders. Are there any varieties you specifically don't want? Like, should we avoid sending you some Goliath bird eaters? Oh, no, you shouldn't avoid that. Um, yeah, you would start straining my capacity though. Um, but I think having a Goliath bird eater would be kind of cool. Uh, Again, it's not native to this area, and I have limits because like I said with the Latrodectus, I was getting black widows as an alternative species to raise in the lab that might be a little bit more consistent in egg production. And that's one of the criteria is I want to have sufficient individuals that I am not generating a population bottleneck for them. And I want to be able to breed them for other experiments that I've got all kinds of ideas for experiments in developmental biology. And also, I'm at a liberal arts university, and I try to try to approach the wishes of the students. So we're set up to do some behavioral studies. I've got a nice little setup with an Raspberry Pi, and I no IR camera, so we can do night observations. So yes, I would love Australian peacock spiders. Everyone does. It's actually kind of sad that I wasn't into spiders the one time I've been to Australia. If I made a visit to Australia now, I would bring a whole bunch of those vials and I would be coming back with all kinds of interesting spiders. Yeah, yeah, and I should visit Australia again someday. Oh, another constraint on the stuff I do is because I'm a developmental biologist, I want to look at living animals. And I know there's a lot of arachnologists that go out with little tiny iris scissors. And when they're doing collections, what they're doing is throwing whole animals into containers of fixative, or they're snipping off parts, like in particular, snipping off palps and throwing those and preserving those. I just couldn't do that. Yeah, when I get animals, I want them to thrive and live and be happy and productive and make lots of little baby spiders for me. So I'm really not one of the pick some sort of collectors of arachnids. So yeah, if I did get arachnid spiders or peacock spiders, my intent would be I'd want several of them. So I'd want breeding pairs so I could start raising them here, which is another problem with the black widows. I'm beginning to get a little worried because they're starting to produce these egg sacs, lots of big egg sacs. And because I keep everything alive, I'm dreading the moment in a few weeks when the first egg sac hatches out, and suddenly I've got 50 or 100 little baby black widows, and yeah, I'll have to sort them out, and I'll raise a generation of black widows. But the excess, I'm probably going to have to end up killing. With the other spiders, the native spiders, I've just let them go. I sort of enriched my backyard for these spiders because I let them go out there. But I wouldn't do that with black widows. I've also been giving them out to students, but I don't think I'd want to do that with black widows. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to be a responsible scientist here when what I really want to do is just swarm the whole place with spiders everywhere. How long will you let them be communal? Which ones? So I'm not raising jumping spiders right now, although I'm kind of set up to do that. And my wife really wants to set up. So we'd kind of like to raise some bold jumpers and bronze jumpers. So we'll see if we can do that later this summer. Hey gang, it's getting late. I think I'm going to have to let y'all go because I'm old and tired and sleepy, and I should go to bed pretty soon. So I think this is a good place to stop. It was fun. I'm glad you guys stopped. All you people stopped by to talk to me because I haven't been very cheerful lately, and it's kind of nice to have somebody to talk about things like spiders and evolution and origin of life and all that kind of cool stuff. So I'm going to let you go right now, and maybe I'll do this again sometime. Yeah, we're some of us aren't arachnophiles here, and that's okay. That's also the case. Okay. Good night, everyone. And again, thanks for popping by, and I'll try to do it maybe end of next week or thereabouts.